back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Landry, and today I wanted to start a new series on my channel. A new show just came out on Fox called Best Medicine, and I have fallen in love with that show, and I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of a recap each week after each episode and to kind of give you my perspective on things and things that I like, what I didn't like, and talk about the characters and all that kind of thing. So first of all, if you don't know what Best Medicine is, it is a American version slash twist to an original series that came on in Britain called Doc Martin. And I am a huge Doc Martin fan. I jumped on that show right away. And fell in love with it. In 2024, when nothing was on in the summertime, I was going through the free channels to try to find a show slash movie to watch, and came across Doc Martin. And watching the first episode of the first season, or series as they call it in Britain, I wasn't sure if I was going to fall in love with that show or not, and then quickly after the second episode became addicted, wanting to watch episode after episode, falling in love with the storyline and everything all about it. And there is 10 seasons slash series, as they call them, of that TV show. It was on for 18 years, and in 2022, they decided to wrap it up, which is kind of cool that they didn't get canceled. It was a decision from the whole producers and everybody of the show to kind of say goodbye to that show because they wrapped it up because it was a very good show. And if you're wanting to see Doc Martin, you can watch series 1 through 6 on the free channels, and then 7 through 10 are not free. You're going to have to either get an Acorn subscription or do what I did and get the DVD set. My parents got me the DVD set for my birthday when I became a huge fan of the show. And I've watched the show 3 times through already. So I'm a very, very huge fan, so to speak. And I'm starting to rewatch from the beginning again as I watch Best Medicine to kind of do a comparison of the two, so to speak. So yeah, that's the little backstory, and I just wanted to make a little series of me reacting to Best Medicine. And since I am a Doc Martin fan, I'm going to also, in the video, a separate part, do a what I think as a Doc Martin fan, what I think about the comparison. So that way, if you're a Best Medicine fan only, you can see that the perspective of my interpretation of Best Medicine, and if you're a Doc Martin fan, you can see my opinion about the two coinciding. So I want to do a backstory of what Doc Martin is, and then a backstory of Best Medicine. So if you're a Best Medicine fan, or you're getting ready to watch Best Medicine, never heard of Doc Martin in your life, here's the backstory of what Doc Martin, the British series, is about. It is a show about a big shot surgeon. He was very successful in surgery in London, named Martin Elliam. And he decides that he does not want to be a surgeon no more, and he moves to the small little seaside town called Port Wyn, which is so cool that Port Wyn is a real place. It is actually called Port Isaac. It is in Cornwall, and it is a beautiful place, a place I would love to visit one day to take photographs. As a photographer, that's my dream. And side note, there are a lot of places in Britain that I would love to go and take pictures. This is off topic, but there's a show called All Creatures Great and Small that comes on PBS. That is actually a British show that comes on Channel 5 and then later comes on PBS for us Americans to see. And where it's filmed is also a beautiful place. So I would love to one day go travel and get pictures of the places. Plus, to be able to say that I stayed and visited in a town that one of my favorite shows, Doc Martin, was filmed in, would be pretty cool. But yeah, so that's a little backstory. I didn't share too much, didn't give away too much. That is basically the context of what Doc Martin is about. Small town big shot surgeon moves to small town. And so let's dig into Best Medicine. The description of Best Medicine when it first came out was a doctor named Dr. Martin Best moves from a very big city as a successful heart surgeon, moves to small town Port Wyn, Maine to become the small town doctor. So kind of the same storyline. Both were surgeons, moved to small town, Port Wynne. So let's dig into episode 1 of Best Medicine. Advanced premiered January 4th, 2026 on Sunday after football. The real official premiere was Tuesday, January 6th, 2026 on a Tuesday. So if you're wanting to watch Best Medicine comes on Tuesday nights on Fox, 8 o'clock p.m., next day on Hulu. And I watched the first episode 4 times already. So yes, I watched the advanced premiere, then I watched the regular premiere. I'm just like that. I'm a huge fan. And so, before we dig into Best Medicine episode 1, I want to do a disclaimer. Please, 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 if you have not watched Best Medicine yet, the first episode, and you're wanting to, or whatever it may be, please do not watch this video until after you've seen it, because there's going to be some spoilers. We're going to dive into the episodes, and I don't want to spoil anything for anybody because I don't want to be that person. So please, I'm warning you, do not watch this video until after watching if that is your intention. So let's dig in. First of all, when the show first comes on, the beautiful scenery, they did a very good job, the camera work of showing Port Wynne, Maine. Which, fun fact, if you do not know, this is not filmed in Maine whatsoever. Port Wynne's not a real place, obviously, it's fictional, but it is not filmed in Maine. They are filming this in New York, and they're doing a very fantastic job of making it look like Maine, because without digging into research about the show, I wouldn't know that it's not filmed in Maine. I would think that they're filming it on location. No, they're filming in New York. But yeah, the first impressions, I love the camera work, seeing the scenery, getting to know what the town looks like and everything. It's super pretty. So we start out in a coffee shop. It was kind of funny and awkward, and the more I think about this, I'm kind of understanding the whole thing that happened. So Martin Best, Dr. Best. I want to call him Doc Martin so bad, but he does not like to be called Doc Martin. He has to be called Doc Best, and it's going to be so hard for me to refrain from calling him Doc Martin because I don't know, it's just going to be hard for me, so I'm either going to have to start calling him Dr. Best, or I'm just going to refer to him as Martin. So we'll see. So he's in the coffee line, and he's just standing there, and then this lady walks in, and we find out that it is Louisa, and Abigail Spencer plays Louisa, Josh Charles plays Dr. Martin Best. Both are doing a fantastic job. I love their characters. In fact, I can say that about every character that we have met so far. I love the actor/actress's performance, fulfilling the role of their characters. I love every character. This is going to be a very fantastic show, and I'm excited to watch it unravel. So Louisa walks in, and first thing, the coffee barista, cashier, whatever you want to call her, is like, "Louisa, honey, is everything okay?" And I start immediately thinking in my mind, what's going on, trying to figure out, play in my head what I think is going to happen next. Is she sick? Did something happen? Like, what's going on? And I felt bad for Louisa in a way because she probably didn't want to talk about it because it didn't look like she was in the mood to chat with the town, and probably was a little embarrassed. Not to mention, you have this stranger, Martin, in front of you. You've never seen him before. You don't know who he is. And for them to be throwing her business out there, she looked like she was very upset and awkward. And I got to thinking, why on earth would somebody do that? And at the same time, I was like, but it's a small town. Everybody is close with everybody, so if something happens, everybody knows what's going on in the town. Word spreads quickly, so it's probably not out of the ordinary. It's probably normal for them, but for me, that was weird. So I did feel bad for her. She obviously didn't want to talk about it, and it was very awkward. Everybody's staring at her now. And you got Martin. And at first, it was okay, because, he was looking at her because everyone else turned around to see what this woman was talking about. But then it gets weird because he doesn't look at her once, not twice, but 3 or 4 times, and he keeps looking at her to the point where she gets very uncomfortable, and she's probably like, "Who is this stranger? Why is he being this way?" And she's like, "You've got problems," and she like walks out. So right off the bat, Martin's already made somebody upset with him. He hasn't been there for 5 minutes, and he's already uh offended somebody, so to speak, and he's probably like, what did I do? Because in his mind, he doesn't think he's done anything wrong. He's just being himself. So we get to the job interview. We get to meet the little town council, and I'm a little confused. I've been confused. I've talked to several people that's watching the show and trying to get their opinion. I'm confused about the whole job interview situation. And the reason I say that is because they're asking him questions, and they ask him, when can you start? Meaning that he's got the job. They approve of him, and he said, I can start right away. So I'm wondering, did he already know that he had this job, like, in the bag, and he was going to move there? So he already had his stuff packed, he already had a house, and this and that and the other? Or did he just go down there and hope that he gets the job and he's prepared and ready to go? I just didn't understand. I'm probably thinking a little too much, but I've always wondered that. Like, did he already know he had the job? Because he already had his stuff and everything with him. So did he just take a chance and just up and leave and say, I'm coming here no matter what, whether they want me or not, even if I don't get the job? Like, I don't know. I think I was overthinking. But that whole situation when we get to meet Bert and Al, the father-son duo, the fixer-uppers of the town. Um, and then, of course, we learned that the whole reason everybody is being the way they are to Louisa is because Louisa broke up with her fiance. They were going to get married, and it didn't happen. So that was a whole thing, and everybody's like giving Louisa the cold shoulder, the whole town council, the way that one woman was like, there was going to be a wedding, and then, like, looks at her. And then at that point, she's like, well, everybody's told now. He doesn't know what's going on, so I guess I gotta say, me and the sheriff were going to get married, and we broke it off. And that was like, okay, now everything's making sense. And Bert's like, we're here to demolish the arch. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you interrupt a little job interview to do that? Can't you come and do that when they're not doing something? But whatever. And the whole time, he's like, don't worry, you won't hear a thing. We'll be quiet and it'll be quick. And they're doing the job interview, and all you hear is power tools in the background. And I felt so bad for Martin. And he had the right to do what he did. He said, I'm sorry, but do you conduct all your job interviews in a work zone? And they're like, no. And then they're finally like, Bert, are you almost done? And yeah, we're almost done. And then the little thing after it's over, Bert saying, yeah, that demolished, this is about as demolished as Mark's heart when you dumped him or something like that. And I was like laughing because everybody's like holding this against Louisa. We don't know the circumstances of why they broke it off. She broke it off, but yeah, so far it's looking like everybody is mad at her, so to speak. And so we finally see that he gets the job, and we know that he is now officially the small town doctor. And then I thought it was funny, the whole banter between Louisa, because she walks in, finds out he's the wants to be the new town doctor, and he's already done what he's did in the coffee line, and she's like giving him a hard time, wanting to know why did he move here. And then we learn that he has been to Portland before because his Aunt Sarah lives there, so he kind of threw her name out there so he could kind of try to get the job. And so we learned that he's been in Portland before. And, she's just trying to give him a hard time, and he doesn't skip a beat. He answers every question. Is he answering them a little bit bluntly cross? Maybe just a little bit, but that seems like that's going to be his personality. So, obviously everybody says they want him to be the new doc, but Louisa doesn't because of the whole situation. She's hesitant. She doesn't vote yes, but it's majority vote, so he is now the town doctor. And we learn why Martin was acting so weird in the coffee line. So she's like, comes up to him, she's like, I'm keeping my eye on you. The town means so much to me. And he's like, speaking of your eye, And it turns out that he was actually doctoring in the line. He noticed something was wrong with her eye and thinks that she has glaucoma. So he wasn't acting weird. In his mind, he was being a doctor, trying to fix a problem, help somebody out, but doesn't give them context, so they're thinking he's coming at them the wrong way. So it's kind of, we got to see the whole Martin Louisa unravel, and I can tell right away that he I don't know, he might have he likes her. He's just very awkward, and part of me thinks that I'm Martin in a way. I'm a Doc Martin in a way, because in certain situations I'm awkward and I don't know how to act. And so whenever he turns away after talking to her and he's like, you can see that I'm a really good doctor. I can do a good job. Just give me a chance. He trips over the chair, and I died laughing because I was like, that would be me right there. I would trip over the chair and fall. Making a complete fool out of myself. I would be that. So, yeah, now everything's making sense about the whole Martin Louisa thing. That he wasn't being weird. He was being weird, but not thinking he was weird because he was trying to diagnose a medical condition. And then we head to the Salty Breeze. We get to meet Greg and George, or George and Greg, the restaurant owners / partners in life. And their characters are very interesting, like funny. I like their characters. I'm excited to get to know them very, very little bit better, because obviously in the first season or episode you're learning, you're just now meeting these characters, but you're not really getting to know them much because they're not really in so many scenes. So from what I gathered, George is the cook on the side of things, and Greg is like the business person. Like, they both own the business together, but like George takes care of the cooking, Greg takes care of the finances, is what I'm gathering. And Greg seems more, maybe because it's the first episode, I'm speaking too fast, but I feel like Greg is the more interactive. He likes to spread gossip. He's the juicy gossip teller, because Martin walks in, he's like, I want my keys. And the first thing that Greg says is, have you heard about Louisa? And, obviously Martin does not care about the gossip. He just wants his keys. He wants to go to the doctor's office / house. He wants to just be away. He does not want to do small talk with people. And, of course, that's not okay in that town. You gotta hear the gossip. You gotta hear the juice talk. Like, you're just going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to hear the juicy stuff that's going on in this town if you're going to be a part of it. And Greg just spills out the whole thing about Louisa and how she broke it off with Mark and how they were going to get married and the reception was going to be there and this and that and the other. And, Martin's just looking at his watch and he's annoyed at this point. And he's like, I do not care. But he doesn't. I just want my keys is basically all he wants. And on the side note, the Salty Breeze and their pet pig, Brisket, I died laughing when I saw that pig as their pet, because maybe I'm overthinking things again, but they're in Maine. Their restaurant's called the Salty Breeze. So in my mind, it is a dominant seafood restaurant. And Brisket the pig, Brisket, has more things to do with barbecue and stuff, and it's just so funny to me because they have a pet pig in their seafood restaurant, and that's probably the comedy part. They want you to think that's funny, but I don't know, it's just so funny to me. I died laughing the second I met Brisket the pig, and I'm going to love that they have a pet pig in their restaurant and going to be excited every time we cut to the restaurant and we get to see Brisket. I hope it is a really reoccurring thing that Brisket is like part of this TV series, because I love Brisket the piggy. But yeah, then we meet Sheriff Mark Milo. He walks in. Right off the bat, I think he wanted to become friends with Doc, but I don't think Doc Martin or Dr. Best wanted to be friends. Didn't really want to get to know people at the moment, because of the way he was acting right off the bat. Mark walks in and he's talking about the wedding, and they're like, yeah, we can, or about the wedding party, and it turns out he still wants to do the wedding party, and he wants Martin to come, which is so funny to me because he just now met Martin, and right off the bat, he wants Martin to come join the town festivities, and obviously Martin's like, nope, no thank you, not doing it, already have plans. And I just thought that was so funny, and Mark right off the bat thinks that him and Doc are going to be best friends, so we'll see if that happens. And the whole situation, once again, Doc's just looking at his watch, and he finally gets his keys so he can leave, because you could tell he was getting fed up. He did not want to have any more small talk. He was done. He just wanted his keys, but they kept talking, and it was just so funny. And then my favorite part is when he's leaving, Mark says, will you come to the wedding party or whatever? And he's short, and he says, no, I got plans. And he's leaving, and both George and Greg look at each other, and they're like, well, he seems nice. I like him. And I'm just like dying laughing because I'm like, he was so rude to them. Like, he wasn't interacting. He did not want to talk to them. He just wanted his keys. He wanted to leave. He didn't care if they introduced themselves. He didn't care. And it was just so funny to me. I just died laughing that in their mind, he was nice. They like him. And I don't know if maybe that's a small town thing because they're excited, they're happy, they finally have a doctor again, or what it may be, but I just died laughing when they were like, well, he seems nice, I like him. And I just died laughing. So, that was the Salty Breeze. We got to meet Greg and George, and the sheriff happened to pop by, so we got to meet them, and I'm excited, like I said, to see their characters evolve and get to know them better. So we move on to the doctor's office / Martin's home. It looks like it's combined. The upstairs is his house. The downstairs is his doctor's office, is what I'm gathering. So we get there, and I died laughing because right off the bat, he gets there, he's getting ready to unlock the door, he has his luggage in his hand, and this dog shows up out of nowhere and runs into his house. So yeah, the dog runs into his house, and I immediately die laughing because I'm like, he's not having the greatest first day. He's already made Louisa mad. His job interview kind of got rudely interrupted by construction. Well, the small talk thing can't really help him with that. He's living in a small town. He's going to have to get used to having conversations with random people. But, like, he's just not having the greatest day, and a dog walks into his house. It's not his dog. And right off the bat, you can tell he's annoyed. He doesn't want that dog in his house. And, he walks in, and we get to meet Elaine, the receptionist. Now, I have mixed opinions about Elaine, the receptionist. When I first saw it, I was not liking this character. I was a little annoyed with her because of everything she was doing. It was getting on my nerves. But as I watched again and again the same episode, I began to understand her because part of me, I can also relate to Elaine. What I mean by that is she wants to be a social media / YouTube star. She wants to document her life. She wants to document everything. That's me. I like to document things, share things. But at the same time, there's a time and place. I don't condone you doing it in your work space. Like, that's not okay. You need to focus on your job and do it on the side, so to speak. So when he walks in and she's on her phone, she's doing her little show, her bear with me, with her little teddy bear on her, which that is kind of clever. Bear with me. He didn't find it clever though. He spoiled her enjoyment of telling what the show was called because he got her out of the bat, and you could tell she's like, really? No! Like, because you can tell that she's very excited about her show. But anyway, he walks in, she's doing a little segment, whatever it may be, and she doesn't even stop to introduce herself. She doesn't ask who he is. She does nothing. She's just on her phone, just videotaping. And he walks in, and he's like, who are you? And, am I interrupting you? And, right off the bat, she's like, yes, you are. And I'm like, that's just rude. Stop. Obviously, you can tell he's annoyed. Why don't you stop what you're doing and talk to him and get to know him so he can get to know you? Because right now, you're being rude. You're on your phone filming. And I don't know. It was just bothering me. So she's like, introduces herself finally while she's on her phone still. And she's like, hey, I'm Elaine. I'm your receptionist. And obviously he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that I had a receptionist. I didn't know that the position had been filled. I thought I would do it. And in a way, she was kind of rude to him, because in a way she's like automatically saying that she's going to be his receptionist no matter what. She could have handled it a little bit better. You could tell at that point he was getting very annoyed, because it seems like nobody really cares about his opinions, so to speak. They have their system in their town, and he's expected to do the same thing, so to speak. So yeah, I didn't think Elaine got to the right point with him, like the best first impressions. I could tell that he was already annoyed with her because of her little social media thing going on, and she wasn't really helping him. Not saying that he needed help or wanted help, because he seems like somebody that doesn't really care about small talk. He does it his way, and he gets to doing things. He doesn't want help. He doesn't want to be bothered, but at the same time, maybe he would have appreciated if she would have showed him around and talked to him, letting him know what's going on, kind of thing. But can't really say that for sure. So, as he's dealing with the obnoxious Elaine social media situation, he gets his first patient unexpectedly. And that was kind of funny. The patient, he just storms in. He's like, I need to see the doctor. And Elaine's like, go right in. And he's like, no, don't go right in. I just got here. I'm not taking patients yet. And there was a whole thing. The guy said, this is an emergency. And he said, it better be an emergency. It's an emergency. And he just got mad at him. And then we immediately cut to the theme of the theme song or whatever, the scrolling credits of the beginning of the show. And I really liked the music to it. And I like the showing what Portwin is to get you ready for the next episode. For each episode when they're playing it, I don't know. I've always been a fan. And on a side note, I do want to also mention that I don't know if you realize it when you're reading the credits of who the producer is, who's in the show and everything. There are 2 executive producers that were actually the producer and executive producer for the original Doc Martin. So they actually are people from the original show doing the behind the scenes, helping them come out, produce, and come up with ideas for our American spinoff, which I think is super cool, that there are actually original behind the scenes people helping us out to make this show successful. But yeah, I just felt bad for Martin, dealing with Elaine and then dealing with his unexpected first patient. And it can only get better or worse, right? I mean, so far it's not looking too good for Martin. But yeah, we move on to his patient, his first patient. And let's just say I don't think he, his bedside manner is already not that great. But that's just Martin in general. And we're just going to have to get used to him acting the way he's acting, because it looks like that's just his personality, his demeanor. But he already offended his patient. The patient's mad at him because he's being kind of cross with him. But in his defense, the patient's situation wasn't really an emergency, though. I mean, it was to the patient, but in my perspective, he could have waited. He didn't have to storm in there the way he did, but, whatever. And, we didn't realize, we're learning that there's something wrong with the doc. There's more than he's telling anybody, because of the whole fact, when he's examining the patient, he says, I'm going to have to do a blood test. I can't tell what tell you what's going on without the blood test. And right away, the patient's like, well, do it now. Can you do it now? And the doc's like, yes, I can. But I think it'd be better if you came back. And the patient's like, but you can do it now. And they're going back and forth. And the doc's like, no, I got here 5 minutes ago. You can come back. And when the patient's talking about blood and points to his arm and says, I got a good juicy vein ready for you, the doc Martin kind of gets squeamish a little bit. Like, you can tell something is about to happen. Something's going on that we don't know yet. And so he then says some things to the patient that makes the patient upset, and the patient storms out. And of course, Elaine's like, well, you're a real charmer, aren't you, for your first patient? And of course, Martin's all mad because the patient stormed out, and in his mind, he's trying to help him, but he's not letting him help him. The patient's not letting him help. So that was a whole situation. Once again, Martin's terrible bedside manners got him in trouble with another person in town. And finally, he kind of gets to look around the doctor's office, and I do want to point out that the scene whenever he is looking for inventory and he asks Elaine to write down what he tells her to write down. I guess he's trying to figure out if he needs office supplies. Bandages and stuff like that. He's trying to get a feel of the place. And Elaine is on her phone once again. And I get it. She wants to be a social media star, but once again, he obviously was not a fan of it at the beginning when he first met her, and he obviously made a big to-do about her being on her phone. If I was Elaine, I would quit doing it while I'm ahead, because if you're wanting to stay a part of his team, his staff, you better be redeeming yourself and helping him out, because he's probably going to get mad and fire you. But anyway, that's just my perspective. She's on her phone, and he's like telling her to write down this, need this and that. And of course, he says he's getting ready to turn the water on, and she's like, it feels like there's something I need to tell you. And right when she says it, he turns on the water and it sprays him. And I was laughing at that so hard because it was so funny. But at the same time, I felt super bad for him because once again, something is not going right. His first day in town's not looking good. So, of course, he makes being the doc, he makes the response. Is there anything else you're not telling me? Like hidden landmines or something? And of course she's like, oh, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't be sure. And I was like, oh my word. This is just so funny that this is happening. I feel so bad for him, but at the same time, it's good comedy. And then we get to meet Al and Bert again, and once again, I love the two characters. They were trying to be sweet and help Doc out by doing repairs around the house / doctor's office. Were they probably trying to get business? Probably, like trying to say, hey, we're here, like trying to get business. Yes, but I can tell that they were just trying to be sweet in general and help the doc out. Martin didn't seem to want them to do anything, obviously. He was like, well, I'm sure it's expensive, but then Bert gave him the whoopie pie, and I don't know if Martin knew what a whoopie pie was, and I couldn't tell if, like, he was appreciative of it or if he was annoyed. He kind of sits it down, and I'm like, well, maybe he'll eat it. Who knows? But enough, we got Al, and Elaine, and I can tell that Al is sweet on Elaine because of the way he was acting. I don't think they're dating yet. I think they're just friends, but I think Al wants more. I can't really tell if Elaine wants to be boyfriend and girlfriend yet, or if it's a, kind of a, I just want to be friends, or if she's playing hard to get. I can't tell yet, but I just think it's going to be cute to see their relationship grow, so to speak. Are they going to be friends or become more? And so that was fun to kind of see their interaction with each other, and makes me excited to see that little storyline come to be. And then she gets on her phone again. What is the deal with her getting on her phone? She's on her phone, doing her social media thing again, getting on his nerves. And she doesn't, he decides that he wants to eat something because she's like documenting, this is what I'm eating today. And he's like, I haven't ate anything. And I felt so bad for him. He was going to eat that whoopie pie that Bert gave him. And the dog magically finds his way into the doctor's office and eats the whoopie pie. And I felt so bad for Doc. Once again, something's not going to plan. It's just not looking good for him. His first day in Portland, it's not looking good whatsoever. So we then see him go to the supermarket, grocery store, and everybody was acting super weird to me, in my opinion. He's a regular member of the community now, and they're like making a big to-do because he's shopping in the grocery store. They're like, oh, you're shopping here too. But at the same time, they were being friendly because they were like, welcome to Port Wynn. So that was interesting. To see just how close everybody is in a small town, so to speak. And then we have the mother and the son, and I cringed at this point of the show. I was like, no, why on earth would you do this? So the doc's shopping, and the woman walks up to him. He's like, hi. She's like, hi, you must be Doc Martin. And he's like, I prefer Dr. Best. He's wanting to be called Dr. Best, not his first name. And she's like, oh, my son cut his knee, and I don't know if it's infected. And he was like, we'll make an appointment. As 100% he should be that way. Like, it seems like everybody thinks because he's the doctor, he is the doctor, like, 24/7, which he is in a way. He's on call. But at the same time, like, he has a life too. I don't think he wants to be doctoring all day long in the streets. Like, there's a time and place, you can make an appointment to be seen. I mean, not saying that you can't just, like, if you bump into him at the store and you have something concerning going on, and you could always be like, hey, Doc, I have this going on, but I want to when can I make an appointment? That's one thing. But she walks up to him, and she immediately pulls the Band-Aid off and is showing her son's cut to him in the grocery store. There's blood. And I don't do blood. I don't do needles. It makes me squeamish. I don't like that. And I was just like, in awe. I was like, why did she literally just do that? And then we realized immediately that there's something wrong with Martin. He has something going on because he immediately starts getting squeamish like I would. And he immediately says, make an appointment, keep it covered, it's fine, runs out of the grocery store and immediately passes out in the street. And I was like, oh no. Like, we find out he has a blood phobia, and I'm like, how is this going to pan out? Is somebody going to find you passed out in the street? Like, how are you going to explain this? Like, it was not looking good for him. He's already, can't get over his phobia. He already has a problem. And then, luckily, he doesn't get caught. Didn't look like anybody noticed he had passed out. He gets up and he goes about his business like nothing's happened. And then, so that was something that triggered me. I was like, who on earth in a grocery store, or in public in all places, walks up to your doctor and says, hi, my son cut his knee, I think it's infected, and pulls off the Band-Aid and shows it? Like, ugh, that's just nasty. I don't, I was like, are you kidding me? Ugh. But yeah. And then of course we go back to the doctor's surgery. Unfortunately, he didn't get nothing to eat, and I felt so bad for him because he had to leave and he didn't get his groceries or anything. He's just not having a good day whatsoever. And he goes back in and he has another patient, and that was the whole thing because he's not taking patients right now, but Elaine won't tell people that. She's on her phone. And then we learn that this patient has the same exact diagnosis, or medical condition as the first patient, and you're automatically thinking, oh no, what is going on in this small town? Because it's just too coincidental that this is happening at the same, like, two people have the same medical condition. And of course, Martin's just being himself, and he's asking this guy questions, and the guy's being, I don't know, the guy was being a little too much. I didn't really like his demeanor and everything. I'm like, why is he acting like this? But at the same time, I know Martin doesn't have a good bedside manner, but still, like, what is going on? Why are these people acting this way? And he asks him questions trying to figure out, like, what's going on, and the guy gets mad at him, gets offended, and storms out. And I'm like, well, that's your second patient that you've only had two patients so far, and the two patients you've had, you've already made mad, and they've walked out of your doctor's office. This is not looking good. And I'm like, is this going to be like a reoccurring thing? You're going to make people mad, your patients mad, and they're just going to walk out? But yeah, that was very interesting. I had no clue what to think whenever we had the two things going on, the two same medical problem, two different people but same medical condition going on. I was really like, okay, what could be going on? And then I kind of put two and two together whenever we skip back to the part where he's at the grocery store. He gets up from passing out, and the woman comes up to him, and she's wanting a prescription for estrogen cream, and he's like, I'm not a walking pharmacist. And like, he has the right to be like that. Once again, somebody else stopping him in the street doesn't introduce themselves. They just immediately go to business, wanting him to give her medicine. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Like, what are you people doing? But we kind of put two and two together whenever, not really, but like whenever, like, I kind of figured out, oh, husband and wife, the first patient, this is probably what's going on. Didn't think about anything going on with the second person. Then I was like, maybe it's not that. But then, fast forwarding, he comes out after his second patient consultation doesn't go very well. And, Elaine's on her phone again, being Elaine, and she says, you have a patient, there's been an emergency at the pier. And he immediately gets mad, and he's like, well, did they need an ambulance? And she's not giving him context whatsoever. And he, like, gets mad, and she's like, I don't know, like, not helping him out whatsoever. He finally draws the line, and he's like, you're fired. And at that moment, I was like, I felt bad for her, because, she's just not making things easy for him. Like, at that point, she deserved to be fired, but at the same time, I just kind of felt bad. I was thinking, you could have prevented yourself from getting fired, but here you are. And then the part where she immediately goes on social media and goes live, and she's like, I'm fired. I've been here since I was 16 and have now been fired. I was like, oh boy, that's not going to go very well in the town, because gossip spreads like wildfire, and when they find out the news that the docs got rid of the receptionist, things are not going to go very well. And then we get to the pier, and we get to meet Aunt Sarah, which, thank goodness there was not a real emergency. It was just a thing for her to get Martin to come down there because he wouldn't come visit her. And I love Aunt Sarah. Annie Potts is playing that character, and she's doing an amazing job. I'm excited to get to know Aunt Sarah. It's a cute, sweet character. And we find a little bit more about Martin, what he did there whenever he was staying with her in the summertime. It seems like he knew a lot about lobsters. He was going out with her, catching them and everything, because you see that he's really good at putting the rubber bands on the lobster claws, or whatever you call them. And so that was neat to see that chemistry with them, like, talking about his past childhood and stuff. But I did laugh. I was laughing because she was like, it's about time you came to visit me. You were an awful nephew, because it turns out that he basically used her name to get the job, but he didn't really visit her or talk to her about it. And then it sounds like he didn't really stay in contact with her after he got older, because she makes this comment about how he never talked to her, and he's like, well, I sent a Christmas card out every year, and she was talking about how it didn't have no like explanation of how he's doing or anything, no small talk. It was just Merry Christmas, Martin. And I just was laughing. And then the whole thing about him saying, well, somebody's got to look after you, you'll break a hip, like the whole banter between the two was just cracking me up. And then she cuts her finger, and you realize, yeah, this blood thing is something that's not looking good for him, because he doesn't skip a beat. He immediately looks at her, sees the blood, gets squeamish, says, okay, you'll be fine, I gotta go, and he runs off the boat. And this cracks me up, because he gets off the boat and he gets on the pier. Now, I don't know, did he trip over his feet? What really happened? But he trips and falls, and she doesn't skip a beat. She says, Martin. And that's when he falls. Did you break a hip? And I died laughing, because I was like, oh, she's giving it back to you. You said what you said, and now she can dish it out too. And it was just so funny. I liked that. The two going at each other. Right off the bat, I was like, I'm ready to see more Aunt Sarah. So, that was fun that we got to meet Aunt Sarah. And, we then learned that, the whole medical situation was the wife was having an affair with the other guy, and that was a whole thing. And the way the doc kind of got brought into it, I felt so bad, because really and truly he just was going to talk to the husband, wanted him to come in for medical tests, and then the husband's just there to go fishing and doesn't even see his wife, thinks his wife's gone, and the wife's in the boat with the other guy, and that was a whole thing. And then the part where the doc gets slapped by the wife because the husband storms off, I was like, he didn't do anything. He was literally there talking to your husband. It's your own fault that you got caught. And then the other guy being all rude and everything, telling him he's got problems and calling him a jerk and everything. I just felt so bad for him. And then at that point, he's drawn the line. He's like, that's it. He was ready to leave. He was not going to be the doctor anymore. He was going to leave, because he had enough of the town, so to speak. He was tired of it. He was not going to deal with it anymore, because it seemed like nobody was listening to him, and they were being the way they were being. And he kind of has a little mental breakdown on the pier, which was funny. And let's see. Let's skip ahead. We learned that unraveling. And then let's skip ahead to the party at the Salty Breeze. Mark's having his wedding party. Louisa obviously isn't there because they got broken up. And we do also learn, before the whole affair thing is unraveled, Martin runs into Louisa at the grocery store, and they're the only two in there, and she's talking about love and whatever, and you can tell that something's bothering Martin, because he says, I wouldn't know, I've never been in love, or whatever. And we find out that she did have glaucoma, early stages of glaucoma in her eye, so Martin did save her from potentially having a worser diagnosis in the future. So we did get to kind of see a little sympathetic thing going between the two. But I'm still trying to figure out the whole situation about the whole why he's being the way he is kind of thing. And then, obviously, before the party, we got to go to the scene where he's driving after he's had his nervous breakdown. He's ready to leave Port Wynne, and he's driving, and he kind of looks away from the road for a split second, and he runs his aunt off the road. So Aunt Sarah kind of gets mad at him, and she's like, what is your problem? And then we learn why he has his blood phobia. We learn that there was a girl, an 8-year-old girl, came in from a car accident, needed a heart surgery, and when he started operating, he froze and could not continue the procedure. And then Aunt Sarah brings up, well, that makes sense, Martin, because of Rosemary. And I immediately wanting to know who Rosemary is. We need to figure out who Rosemary is. Because I'm like, who's Rosemary? He said he's never been in love before. So could Rosemary have been a friend? He met, and he did fall in love at a young age. Or is Rosemary a sibling? It can't be his kid, because he's not been married before. And I was just like playing these things in my head. Who is Rosemary? And I was like ready to figure out who Rosemary is. But obviously, we're not going to find that out in the first episode. That's what gets you lured in to want to watch more. So we got that whole thing, and Aunt Sarah's like, you can't leave Port Wynne. If you came here to hide, that's not going to happen. And, he's dead set that he is going to leave. He's done with this town. He was annoyed from the beginning. It was a mistake coming, and da-da-da-da. So then, it was nice to see that when he went, back home, Bert and Al had been repairing stuff, whether he liked it or not, and they fixed the sliding door, which I thought was sweet. Whether he wanted them or not, and of course he gets annoyed, but at the same time, I think he's really grateful that they ended up fixing stuff, because he was happy when the door would open and close. And then he kind of looks across at the restaurant, and Mark's having their party or whatever, and I don't know, I couldn't really tell if he was wishing he went there, or he was like, I don't know, I couldn't tell. But then he gets the phone call that Greg calls him and says George has had an accident. So he ends up having to go to the restaurant no matter what. And he walks in, and I was dying laughing when he remarks dancing to I Will Survive, and he's all drunk and everything, and I was like, oh boy, this is a party, alright. And I was just dying laughing. And then, of course, Elaine didn't skip a beat. She's now working at the Salty Breeze, and she kind of gives him the cold shoulder. I have to work here now because I got fired. And he like rolls his eyes. He's like, well, you got it. You asked for it. So, it's just so funny. And then Brisket's in the kitchen, which is kind of gross in a way, having an animal in the kitchen. But at the same time, I still love Brisket. Brisket is like my favorite animal on the show. So, the dog is cute. The dog don't have a name yet, though. But I just love Brisket. It's just funny to me. But, George had fallen in the kitchen, sprained his ankle. So, that was the first normal patient when he was actually supposed to have patience, so to speak. And I think that went very well. They were very appreciative that he came to take care of them. Obviously, word had gotten around that he was leaving Port Wynne, and, Greg made the statement, it's so sad that you're leaving already, you should stay for the baked bean supper. And, he's just making small talk, and Doc's like, nope, I'm leaving. And then Mark decides to, oh, you showed up after all, and is like talking to him. And then, of course, of all the things that needed to happen, the lady that had the affair with the young guy walks in and wants to talk to him. And if that don't get worse, the husband walks in. They start having an argument in public. Martin's standing there like, why am I in this? I don't even care. And then the young guy comes in, and they all start fighting, and Martin's just standing there, and he's like, why do I get myself into these things? And then one thing led to another, and poor Martin got punched in the face for the second time. And he immediately goes to the bathroom, and he's like bleeding, and I was like, I feel so bad for him, and he's not doing well because of his blood phobia. And then this is when, in the episode, I start to get a little bit more into a fan of Elaine because of what she does next. She goes and she checks on him. At first he says he's okay, but he's obviously not okay. So she finally goes in the bathroom and sees him, and she starts helping him. And this is the part where I think Elaine is growing and she's changing, because I was very proud of this part. She tells him that when she worked for the old doctor, she used to be able to take blood and stuff like that. And part of me was like, why didn't you tell him that to begin with? But at the same time, I'm happy she told him, because she sees that there is something wrong with him. Like, he has a problem and he needs help, and she's offering her assistance. Now, do we know if he's taken the offer? Not necessarily, because that's just kind of how it ends. And I'm also like, I was talking to, like, was listening to somebody else reenacting to Best Medicine, reacting to it, and they had a point. They were like, did she do that? She says she can keep a secret. Will it, if he lets her become the receptionist again, will she start holding that against him? And that's a very good question. In my opinion, I don't think that she is that mean. I don't think she's mean at all. I think she just has in her head she's going to be a social media star. I don't think that she would do this, hold that against him. But then again, it's too early on. We don't know anything about her. Like, I'm still learning stuff about her. So yeah. So we leave the bathroom, and of course, at that point, at the closing scene of him and Mark's vulnerable because he's all drunk and sick, and he knows he's made a fool out of himself, and he's talking about how he's just heartbroken. You gotta feel bad for the guy. He just got dumped, and he's just having the hardest time. And Doc's trying to help him, gave him some medicine, and then he doesn't want to stay. But at that moment, Mark is at a position where he needs somebody to talk to, and Martin goes and sits there and listens to him. And I thought that was sweet on Martin's end to not really want to be there, but at the same time, he had a little bit of sorriness for Mark and was listening to him. And then, because of that, Mark finally says that he needs to stay. And after all the sad things that have happened to Martin, his first day in Portland, he finally decides to stay. So he's not leaving after all, which is good, because I was like, I knew that he probably wasn't going to leave, because that's kind of silly to be like, okay, I'm leaving now in the first episode. You had to do a little bit of a conflict of interest thing to get you ready for the second episode. And then at the end of the show, of course, we see Martin has a picture of him, and it looks like another person. And it makes me wonder, is that Rosemary? Who is Rosemary? And it goes off, and we're ready for episode 2. So yeah, that was my little take on everything. We did a little recap. I kind of did a scene to scene. So let's talk about episode 1. As I said before, I'm excited to see the chemistry between Martin and Louisa grow. I'm excited to see his relationship with Aunt Sarah grow, because I love Annie Potts' character. I love Aunt Sarah. I'm excited to see what Mark Milo, the sheriff, his personality grow. What's his personality like? Right now, he's in a bad situation. He's having a bad time. He just got dumped. His heart's broken. So the way he's acting right now is understandable. Will he change, or is that his quirky character? I love Greg and George. I'm loving to learn and get ready to learn more about their characters. Brisket the pig, I've said. Love that character. I love the pet. Elaine, once again, I have a love-hate situation. I love the character because I can relate to her in a way. At the same time, she's annoying me. But hopefully that will change now that she has kind of grown a sympathy towards Doc wanting to help Martin with this blood situation. So we'll see if that really comes to play, or if she's fired for good. And yeah, I think that's everything. That's everybody on the dog. I'm curious to see if this is a reoccurring thing. But yeah, that is my opinion / interpretation of Best Medicine episode 1. So thank you so much for watching. Now for the second part, I'm going to be doing an interpretation of its relevancy to Doc Martin. So if you have not watched Doc Martin yet, I would suggest you skip over this part of the video and do not watch it, because there are going to be spoilers. But if you're a Doc Martin fan and you're curious to see my opinion, come on over. Let's start talking about that in that scenario. Alright, hello everyone. If you are a Doc Martin fan and you've waited this far along in the video and you're curious to see what my thoughts are about Best Medicine Episode 1 in ties to Doc Martin Episode 1, you're at the right place, and let's get started. So right off the bat, obviously the whole storyline about Martin Elliam and Martin Best about being surgeons, going into Port Wynne, moving to Port Wynne, same storyline, just different. I don't know, I can't remember what Martin Elliam's surgery specialty was. Martin Best was a heart surgeon. Then we got the ties to Port Wynne. We have Aunt Joan and Doc Martin, Aunt Sarah, and Best Medicine. Same storyline. Went there in the summertime, visiting aunts. So that's how they have their ties. The storyline between Louisa and Martin, same thing, so to speak. The eye thing, about the glaucoma in the eye, first interpretations, just a little bit different. Doc Martin, we were on an airplane. Best Medicine in a coffee shop. Regardless, same storyline. Now, in Doc Martin, Louisa wasn't engaged to Mark, so that is different. The whole scenario about the whole Louisa thing, relationship with the sheriff or police officer, is not the same. But the job interview is the same. Louisa didn't think that he was the right candidate. There was a whole banter between, and Martin gets flustered and hits his head and trips. And both things, he was in an awkward situation. Doc Martin, we do not have anybody in the pub. There's no George, there's no Greg. So that's cool to have a change of characters on our series, to have two new characters to get to know. Nobody was in Doc Martin that I can remember until later on. In the series is when we start talking about the pub. Let's see. There's no pet pig in Doc Martin. I love Brisket, so it's cool to see Brisket as another fun pet character. Obviously, the Bert and Al situation. Bert and Al in our series is a little bit different than Bert and Al in the original Doc Martin. It seems like Bert and Al in our series is able to fix things, where the Bert and Al in the other series, the original, seem to always not have the knack of plumbing. They flooded the surgery in the original. They actually fixed things in ours. So we will see. I'm still loving Bert and Al regardless of the whole thing. It's just an opposite of the original. Let's see. We got a dog, which is fun. Obviously, Doc Martin and Martin Best, both characters, do not seem to like dogs. So it'll be fun to see how Martin Best reacts to the dog throughout the series. In terms of the whole storyline of the show, I do gotta say I felt like they were copying it a little too much, because of the fact you have the two men and the wife that had the affair, and the whole thing about the situation. She gave both of them the medical condition, and it was her fault, and she got mad, and Martin kind of helps them find the wife having the affair, and so it's his fault, and they both get punched, and they go to the pub or the restaurant / pub to have a conversation, and he ends up getting blamed for that too. So in terms of storyline, for me, it was fun to get to know the characters of Best Medicine, but at the same time, I felt like the episode was too much of a copycat, because I knew right off the bat what was going on and what was going to happen in terms of the medical scenario part of it. So I'm hoping that as we get on to more seasons or episodes of the season, that it's not duplicate. They can take ideas, that's fine, but I don't want them to copy it. I guess they just did that because it was a pilot and they wanted to, in their minds, that was the best way to start the show out. I don't know, but I had to refrain because I'm watching Best Medicine with my parents. and my parents have never seen Doc Martin. My dad may have seen a few episodes of it because I was watching it when he would came in. Like in April, whenever I messed my back up, I was binge watching Doc Martin because I couldn't move. I was in so much pain, and he may have seen a few episodes then, but he would not know what's going on because I was at that point in the middle of the series in a different season, and he's never seen it from part 1 to all of the above. So nobody knows, they don't understand what's going on. So I had to refrain for saying anything because I didn't want to spoil anything because they've never seen the original. But from terms like my perspective of that, yeah, I feel like it was a little bit too copycat-y. I already knew what was going on, and anybody else that's watched Doc Martin before would know what's going on. But other than that, I feel like they've done a good job. I love the characters. We obviously haven't met the chemist yet. We passed the pharmacy, but we don't know the chemist. I'm excited to get to know her. I think we've gotten to know all the other characters, though, so far, that we would have met. We got to meet the sheriff. Let's talk about that. Mark Milo, his character is something else. I was watching somebody's interpretation of, their interpretation of Best Medicine. They were talking as a Doc Martin fan, and they had a point. They said that they think that Mark Milo is a combination of Mark, the original police officer, and Penn Hale, and later is in series 3, season 3, becomes the new police officer, and they're saying that maybe he's trying to be Penn Hale's personality as Mark, meaning there's probably not going to be another, they're not going to replace the sheriff. But yeah, I could see where they're getting at. They're probably not going to get rid of the sheriff and get a new person to replace Mark. It's probably going to be Mark Milo throughout our whole entire version. So I could see that, where they're coming from, and I can kind of agree. I can see a little bit of Penn Hale personality in our Mark Milo. So yeah, I'm curious to see his character grow as we watch the series. But yeah, I think that's all I really thought about the episode in terms of a Doc Martin viewer fan. With that, other than it being a little bit too copycatty, in terms of kind of figuring out early on what was going on, there were still some fun, unique things to the episode, so to speak. So I am excited to continue watching, and I am still watching. I started watching Doc Martin over again for the 4th time to kind of be able to do research to compare the 2 episodes when I'm making these videos, so that'll be fun. But yeah, I'm ready for Best Medicine episode 2. Obviously when I'm filming this, it has already came out, so I'm getting ready to film a reaction to that episode. So I'm hoping to post both of these simultaneously, so come on over to see my thoughts on Best Medicine episode 2. And yeah, thank you guys if you stuck around and watched the whole entire episode of this first little episode of my little series. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And feel free to leave in the comments what your thoughts were about the episode if you're a fan. And I'll be happy to read those. And I'm just curious what everybody else's opinion is. And that's all for today. Stay tuned for episode 2. See you soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.